Chapter 33 Restructuring the Post-War World, 1945 to Present. The United States and Soviet Union opposed each other as they tried to achieve different goals. Communists won a civil war in China, making it the world's second communist nation. The United States fought two wars in Asia, trying to contain communism. The Cold War also spread to Latin America and elsewhere. The superpowers later began to enjoy better relations. Chapter 33, Section 1. The United States and the Soviet Union were allies during World War II. In February 1945, they agreed that Germany would be divided into separate zones. Each zone would be occupied by the soldiers of one of the main Allied powers. They also agreed that Germany would have to repay the Soviet Union for damage and loss of life. Soviet leader Joseph Stalin, in turn, promised free elections in Eastern Europe and to declare war on Japan. These allies also were among 50 countries that formed the United Nations in 1945. This new world body was pledged to save the world from war. Still, the two superpowers had sharp political and economic differences. They also had different goals after the war. The United States wanted to encourage democracy and trade. It wanted to put the different zones of Germany back together to make one nation. But the Soviet Union had these goals: to promote communism, to take advantage of raw materials in Eastern Europe, and to rebuild its own economy, and to keep Germany divided and weak. After the war, Stalin made sure communist governments were in place in Eastern Europe. This divided Europe between the Communist East and the Democratic West. This division was called the Iron Curtain. United States President Harry Truman then began a policy of containment to block further Soviet expansion. As part of this policy, the United States adopted the Marshall Plan in 1947. The plan donated food and materials such as machines to European countries, helping them rebuild. In 1948, the Soviets and the Americans clashed over Germany. France, Britain, and the United States agreed to pull their troops out of Germany and let the three zones that they occupied unite. The Soviets refused to leave their zone, however. Then, they cut off all highway and train traffic into Berlin, which was deep within the Soviet zone. The United States and the British responded with the Berlin Airlift. They flew food and supplies into the city for 11 months. Finally, the Soviets lifted the blockade. The growing struggle between Americans and Soviets came to be called the Cold War. Many other countries allied with one superpower or another. The United States, Canada, and several countries in Western Europe formed the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO. In this military alliance, each nation promised to defend any other member that was attacked. The Soviets and the countries of Eastern Europe made a similar agreement. It was called the Warsaw Pact. In 1949, the Soviet Union announced that, like the United States, had developed an atomic bomb. 3 years later, both superpowers had a newer, even more deadly weapon, the hydrogen bomb. Soon both nations were involved in an arms race. They produced growing numbers of nuclear weapons and developed new ways to deliver them. In 1957, the Soviet scientists shocked the world by launching Sputnik, the world's first human-made satellite. Many Americans felt that the Soviets were far ahead in science and technology. The United States then began spending huge amounts of money to improve science education.